Well, good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of you here today. It's so wonderful to have such great spirit in this hallway from all of you and from the images that are on the wall. My name is Dawn Stewart, and I'm the Director of Athletics here at Otterbein, and it's with great pleasure that I welcome you here this morning. Today we gather to honor a man who epitomized what it meant to be a champion in every facet of his life. Edwin Roush, known to Dubs, to all of you, was a man of conviction and values who loved his family, his friends, his teammates, and this institution. And while I didn't have the privilege of knowing Dubs, I spent the last year learning about him and the strength of character that made him revered by all who did. Before I begin our program this morning and share a little bit more about Dubs, I'd like to tell you about the evolution of this project. As we all know, the success of a team is made up of the contributions of many individuals, each of whom have a valuable role. Whether it's a team physician who cares for our athletes, a coach who leads a team to a national championship, or a student athlete who achieves All-America status, each role is important to our Otterbein athletics tradition. So last fall, the athletics staff and I began brainstorming ways to honor the individuals who have contributed to Otterbein's tradition of success. And after collaborating with members of the Clements Foundation and the Roush family, we came to the concept of the Edwin L. Dubs Roush Hall of Champions, an interactive display that honors our athletes, our coaches, and all the individuals who have supported Otterbein athletics throughout its history. During my conversations with those close to Dubs, we spent time talking about his characteristics and his values. And from these conversations, I learned that Dubs was a modest man, someone who would not like the spotlight shown only on him. He was a generous, fun-loving, eternal optimist who always focused on the positive side of things. Dubs was a man of values, and he lived by the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Most notably, Dubs believed in the power of teamwork, and that success could only be achieved when the team was put first. And because of this belief, Dubs himself was a great teammate throughout his life. He was the quarterback of the 1946 OAC championship football team, a World War II Navy veteran, a professional football player, a successful Westerville business owner, and most importantly, a married father of 5. He bettered the lives of all those he came into contact with, and he continues to do so today through the works of the Roush Foundation. This display is a demonstration of what Dubs valued. It illustrates the power of teamwork and the role that so many had in building our tradition of success here at Otterbein. It's a demonstration of generosity, as this display was put in place to recognize Dubs' generosity throughout the years, given on his behalf by the Clements Foundation to his beloved institution and athletics program. Finally, this display is a demonstration of optimism and fun, as it has already spurred many alumni to recall on their times at Otterbein. Dubs was a man of strong convictions, and the fruit of his life has been extraordinary. All of you are proof of that. So on behalf of Otterbein Athletics, I would like to say thank you to Dubs and to the Roush family. We are eternally grateful. This time, I would like to introduce another champion of Otterbein Athletics. All that we do at Otterbein on and off the field is led by this special person. Please welcome to the podium Otterbein University President, Dr. Kathy Crindle.
Well, thank you, Dawn, and thank you for your leadership and being a champion of Otterbein. What a great morning. And with this impressive wall at our side, who amongst us isn't standing just a little bit taller today? I want to welcome everyone and to give a special greeting to the members of the Roush family who are with us here today. Mary Lou, Cindy, Wendy, Larry, and Dan. as well as to the members of the Clements and Roush family foundations. Every time I walk past this wall and pause to look at it, I'm overwhelmed by all that it brings together and by all of the messages that it contains. It features the best of Otterbein athletics. It represents the best of Otterbein in its purpose and its inclusivity in its representations. And certainly, it stands as a proud reminder of true Otterbein champions. This wall is being dedicated for Dubs Roush in recognition of gifts from the Roush Family Foundation and the Vida S. Clements Foundation. These two lead gifts account for 50% of the planned transformation of our athletic playing surfaces in Memorial Stadium. At its fullest potential, this wall of champions can serve as the perfect source of inspiration for the athletes and coaches who proudly call themselves Cardinals. Dub's entire life could be used as the playbook to share with every Cardinal athlete. And this wall, well, I would say this wall stands as the perfect example of the kind of leader Dubs was. In fact, if I were a coach, I'm not, Dawn, but every now and then, but if I were a real coach, I would bring each new student athlete who joined the Otterbein community to this very wall. And I would tell them the story of the tradition that they are joining. And I would use this wall as the storyboard, the very springboard for that conversation. I would challenge them to aspire to the greatness on their playing field, in their classrooms, and in how they live their lives. That is evidenced here by our All-Americans and our Hall of Fame honorees. I would challenge those new student athletes to acknowledge that every team member's role is important, and as a result, each is also deserving of recognition and respect, as is evidenced on this wall. It takes heart, commitment, discipline, and sacrifice to be a college athlete. And whether your name is called out repeatedly during a game or only once when you are first introduced as a team member, what you contribute to that team and your university matters every day. And then I would challenge those new student athletes to always be a champion long after their official game days are over. I would tell them to remember each lesson they learn on the field during their games, from a trusted coach or from a respected teammate. I would tell them that each win they celebrate, and yes, every loss that they endure, all of it counts. Every piece of it is preparing them for the biggest and most critical game they will ever play. That's the game of life. As professionals, as citizens, as alumni, and as members of their communities and families. And then I would tell them that they should aspire to be like the man, the very man who is responsible for this Hall of Champions. Because the way he played the game and the way he lived his life after his game days ended are captured in every choice of what they will discover on this wall. I would tell them that Dubs Roush played with tremendous passion as an athlete, and that he led his alma mater with the same intensity and heart, then later as a board member and as chair of the Board of Trustees, and also as a philanthropic giant in the history of Otterbein. He remained one of Otterbein's most important team captains for many, many years. I would tell them that Dubs Roush loved Otterbein and that he never stopped being a champion for his Cardinals, that he kept fighting win after win after win, and that they could see his track record everywhere they looked on this campus, from this wall to the halls of Roush Hall, to the O Club, to Memorial Stadium, to the Clements Recreation Center, and those are just a few of the examples he has left as part of his legacy. Then I would ask them to decide what they wanted it to mean when their name stands as a part of this wall. And I would ask them to thoughtfully consider what they will do to prove that they too have the heart of a champion, the kind of heart that Dubs Roush had, as an athlete, as a scholar, as a member of the Otterbein community, and as a servant of the common good. I'm proud that this wall stands just as much for Dubs' core values as it does for Otterbein's core values. I know our coaches and Don Stewart work hard to find and recruit the scholar athletes who are worthy of wearing our Cardinal uniforms. I'm thankful that they will have this wall and the story of the man who inspired it to remind them, to encourage them, and to challenge them all to be champions for Otterbein. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Crandall. As we continue the celebration and the recognition of a man who symbolized what it means to be a champion, I would like to introduce someone who considers Dubs to be a great friend, Dr. Bill Freeman.
You know, I believe that some men are born champions, and Doug certainly was, and learned his work ethic in the family farm over in Gahanna. Went to Gahanna High School and was a champion football player there. Then he was introduced to Otterbein College by his brother, Ernie, who was a referee in the area. And Ernie knew Sam Selby, who was the coach of football at Otterbein at that time. And through the efforts of Sam Selby and then President J.R. Howe, Dubs came to Otterbein. And he was always impressed with J.R. Howe because J.R. Howe had a significant philosophy of athletics. He believed that athletics was the core spirit of a college, and he believed that athletics complemented a strong athletic program, complemented a strong academic program. And Dubs was really impressed because he had never met him. And Dubs' first time on campus, he was walking down the sidewalk and noticed this man hurrying off to his office. And the man turned and said, "Hi, Eddie," and it was J.R. Howe. And Dubs never forgot that, and he never forgot the philosophy that J.R. Howe had for athletics. So he came to Otterbein, and his tenure was interrupted because he served his country in the United States Navy, and as he would say, 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. And came back in '45 and married his childhood sweetheart, Mary Lou, who's here today. And by the way, he affectionately nicknamed her Bubbles. And then came the 46 team, and we all know about the 46 team, the only championship team that Otterbein has had in football. He captained it, he led it. He led a bunch of determined and spirited veterans to what Woody Hayes described as the strongest and the best Division III football team he had ever seen. And Woody was coaching at Denison at the time. So he left Otterbein and began his teaching and coaching career. His first assignment was North High School. He coached track, and believe it or not, he taught math, science, and biology. He then was recruited by Gahanna to coach their football team, and he went over to Gahanna, continued teaching, coached a championship team his last year before he retired from teaching, and was very proud of the fact that the superintendent of schools asked him to design and teach a class in psychology. And I always chided him about that a little bit. But if anybody thinks he wasn't a competitor, and if anybody thought he couldn't teach psychology, you need to sit down at the gin rummy table with him. I could have retired 5 years earlier had I not played that. But he really was a competitor. And interestingly enough, in his last days, when he wouldn't get out of bed and he was hardly eating, and it just broke your heart, I went back to his room and whispered in his ear a name that we called each other, which I will not mention today, and said, "I think I can beat you at gin rummy today." And I looked down and I saw one eye open, and then I saw the other eye open, and then I saw the head turn, and then I saw this frail man get up out of that bed, grab his walker, went to the dining room, got out the cards, and we played a game of gin rummy. And guess what? He won. I'll tell you how much of a competitor he was. He instilled some of that into me. I never thought about competing, but after you're around him a while, you wanted to compete, and so we got to competing. And he had horses. And they were in kind of what I thought was a shabby stall, 3 stalls open to the outside. So I started riding him a little bit. I said, a man of your means need to take a little bit better care of your horses. I did this enough, and one day I looked out the window, we were neighbors, and a barn was going up. And he built a barn for the horses. So then I got interested in horses, and I called him and I said, meet me at your barn. And we met, and I had a tape measure. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to build a barn, and it's going to be 2 foot longer than yours and 2 foot wider. And I did. Then he buys a motorhome. And I called him and I said, meet me at your motorhome. Had my tape measure. What are you doing? I'm going to buy a motorhome 2 foot longer than yours. So then in Florida, we were neighbors too. He bought a boat. Same thing, got out the tape measure. Bought a boat 2 foot longer than his. Then one day I read in the paper, he's donated $2 million to Otterbein College. I called him and I said, you got me, buddy. But he decided he couldn't support a family on $2,800 a year. And he and a friend opened a hardware store uptown Westerville. And I remember as a kid, everybody said, you're nuts. There's a hardware store 100 yards on the corner. It's been there for 50 years. You can never, never compete against them. And he always said one thing, the word can't is not in his vocabulary. And you never wanted to say can't to him. Well, you know the rest of the story. 9 years later, he moves down to a cow pasture and builds a big store. And again, everybody in town, you're nuts. Nobody's going to travel down there. Well, they did, because he was a competitor. And he'd be the first to tell you that his success is built on the fact that he had good employees and good people around him. And his success on the football team was because he had good players around him. Well, the rest of the story is 2 hardware, 2 sporting goods stores, a Honda dealership that is among the top in the nation, not only the district, but in the nation. He was a community leader. He was a longtime member of the Rotary Club. He was president of the Rotary Club. The Rotary Club's motto was service above self, and certainly he epitomized that. He was president of the Businessmen's Association of Westerville. And probably his biggest pride and joy was when he and Red Bailey came together at the urging of Mo to form the L Club. And he remembered what J.R. Howe told him. And he kept that philosophy the rest of his life. The O Club has presented the college with over $5 million of contributions toward the athletic program. So we honor a great man here today. He loved his family, he loved his church, loved his community, his employees, Otterbein, and certainly Otterbein athletics. And I kind of feel that he's here today. And if he were to speak, I think he would say, thanks to Otterbein for this honor. He would be very humble. And he would say, I couldn't have done it without my team. God bless the life of Doug Roush.
Thank you, Doc. Well, at this time, I'd like to ask President Crindle and Doc to step up once again, along with Larry and Dan. We would like to invite Larry and Dan to actually lift the covering off of the Dubs Roush plaque to unveil the dedication.
Rip the ribbon.
Just lift it off. You can lift it straight up. There you go. like to get a photo?
Yeah. We get out of the way.
You better get back.
Thank you. Well, as we conclude this portion of our celebration today, there are a lot of people that have come together to make all of this happen, and I'd like to take a minute to thank them for making this project and this event possible. Erin Davis, who was the designer of this entire display, she is part of our Otterbein Department of Marketing and Communications. The members of our athletic staff who worked tirelessly to pull this together: Connie Richardson, Brandon Coons, Tim Doubt, Kathy Mazza, Diane Ross, Ed Seguda, Adam Prescott, Preston Miller, Aaron McPherson, and Margaret Laws, as well as our university archivist, Stephen Grinch. In addition, I'd like to thank Lucy Cryan and all the members of the University Advancement Team led by Vice President Heidi Tracy. I'd also like to thank Tim Priest, Jack Farley, and Gary Bream from the Otterbein University Service Department. And then I'd also like to thank Willie Franklin, who's the man behind the scenes here, making all this sound happen and a lot of the technology. He's a part of our Department of Information Technology. And of course, last but not least, Bob Gaddy, our Vice President for Student Affairs, for all of his support. Certainly, I'd like to encourage everyone to stay and take photos, and after you're finished, make your way to the second part of today's celebration, out to the tent at the north end of the stadium, where we'll have our celebration of champions. Thanks, everyone.